Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm Carol Lee and your host tonight with Conversations with a Vet. Want to thank everybody for joining. Jova Q, I see you out there. Thank you so very much for joining. Jason, thank you as always. And yes, Jova Q beat you tonight. So some information. So I had the honor of joining, I believe in total there were 26 veterans in Murray County on Thursday. We all went to to breakfast. They meet every Thursday at 10 a.m. for breakfast and have been doing so for the last 10 years. And I was invited this past Thursday, to join them and talk a little bit about Conversations with a Vet, what it's about, why I began this channel. And it was such an honor, some wonderful individuals, and so happy and thankful for the invite. So again, thank you to all of you that may be watching tonight. While I was there, a gentleman gave me a flyer. They are doing Veterans Day, honoring all who served. It is going to be November 9th, 2024, 10 a.m. The address is going to be 2000 Reserve Boulevard in Spring Hill, Tennessee. There's going to be a video presentation featuring Mr. Jim Walsh. He's got an MBA. That address is actually going to be 307 Bombardment, he's with, Jim Walsh is with the 307 Bombardment Group. He's president, and there will be brunch provided. You will need to RSVP though. The number is 931-486-4200 prior to November 7th. He talks about, if I remember correctly, his group, this bombardment group, actually goes around and locates these bombardiers that have been missing, have gone down during flights, during wars, etc. And they locate these planes, which is really exciting. But he does have a video presentation, again, November 9th, 2024, 10 a.m., and that's in Spring Hill. You can RSVP 931-486-4200 prior to November 7th. I'm really excited to hear how that goes as well. So, and I believe that's going to be at the Reserve, I think is what it is, the Reserve at Spring Hill. So really excited. Now I have a wonderful guest waiting in the wings, and he is being very, very patient. I also do want to kind of give note to the authors behind me. Every one of them are veteran authors. So if you haven't picked up their books, you can pick up every single one of them on Amazon, with one exception. And that is going to be this book here. And this one must be purchased directly from the author. And let's grab it. So this one is Leadership in Love and War, Memoirs of a Special Operator. And this is by Bradford Presley. So here is the book here. And you can go to www.leadershipinloveandwar.com. So hang on for me here, if y'all will. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Randy, and hopefully we should be going live here. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. Randy, how are you?
Good. How are you tonight?
Good. I'm not sure if we're having some technical difficulties or not.
Oh, that's always fun.
I know. So, Jova Q, can you hear me out there? Jason, can you hear me? It says I'm live. He didn't see me. I don't know why he sees me now. Okay. So I think we got it squared away. So I know when I first went live, it was like a little slow catching up. So that might have been it. So I really appreciate you being here, taking the time, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. So thank you for taking the time out to come on the show.
Yeah.
So I always ask or start by asking about your childhood. So if you could tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was it like being Randy as a child?
So, I had a kind of unique childhood, I think. I grew up in a middle of nowhere, Michigan, in a very small rural town. My graduating class was 90.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty small. So everybody you went to kindergarten with, you graduated with if they stuck with it. So, the whole town, everybody knew each other. You couldn't really go out and do anything, couldn't get in trouble because somebody would always tell your parents before you made it home.
Mm-hmm.
So, they had their little network of friends. We didn't even have a home phone growing up. So, but they always seemed to get the news of whatever me and my brother were doing before we made it back to the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, my
But that's
parents,
good that everybody watched out for each other, right?
well, yeah, but when you're a teenage boy trying to do teenage boy things, you don't want your parents to know you're out doing dumb stuff.
I know. Moms are good at that too.
It was amazing. One time, me and a friend, we borrowed a horse from his neighbor in the middle of the night to ride to town. And I didn't think anybody would know, right? It's the middle of the night. Everybody I know is asleep. Well, no, when I got home the next morning, I was grounded and asked why I was on a horse riding through town at 2 a.m. Yeah.
What were you doing?
But he wanted to go into town, so we borrowed horses and took him into town from his
Did you
neighbor.
think did he think it would be just less quiet than taking a car?
Well, so his parents would lock up the keys because he was kind of a delinquent. So they knew that if they left the keys out, he would probably take a car. So he thought he'd be stealthy because you go into the pasture, you go over to the far side, and there's a gate that went to a dirt road. So you didn't even have to go up by the house or the barn. You could go out this side gate, and he knew that it was never locked. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I'm having a hot flash. My glasses are like fogging up. So Jason says, thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, Jason, for your support. I appreciate it.
So you were kind of a rebel.
Sort of, but like my little brother would get in a lot more trouble. Like he would really, really push the envelope. I was more the middle ground. I'd dabble in the gray area, but nothing crazy.
And you're the oldest, so you're firstborn?
No, I have a sister who's 6 years older than me. She didn't live with us at the time. So I really was raised with my little brother, Jonathan.
Okay. All right. And how were you in school? Were you studious? Did you like school? Did you not like school?
It depends on which teacher. I would get very bored in school, and then I would goof off. So in high school, I unfortunately made the decision that I thought goofing off and girls were more important. So I would fail a class a year just so I'd have goof off time. So I'd pick a class that I knew didn't matter for graduation, and I would just be there physically, but I would not be doing any schoolwork. Everything else was A's and B's, which is kind of horrible because I really drug down my grade point average by goofing off too much. So
Thinking back now, right? There's things we would do differently.
yeah, I tell my daughters that now because they're in school. My youngest is a senior this year. I'm like, look, you got to make it through the year. You got to have good grades, right? You don't want to set yourself up for a hard life because you wanted to goof off in high school. Don't do what dad did. It's not going to serve you well. But she looks at where we are now in our life, and she doesn't know all the struggles and everything that created. So she's like, looks around, yeah, this is okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not, kid.
It's a lot of hard work to pull yourself up, and especially mentally, right? Because you're kicking yourself when you look back and you're like, that was easy compared to adulting.
Oh yeah. If I could go back, I would love just to sit in, the class and actually pay attention and do what I was supposed to.
Hmm.
But I didn't. So I've learned some hard lessons.
Right. And we deal with the consequences of that. And we buckle down now.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I get it though. Kids, that's just kind of how they are. They've got to make their own mistakes no matter what. And I do remember, with my two younger boys, how difficult that was every single day when it came to school. Like every day, it was a fight.
Yeah.
It was, did you get homework done? Yes. And next thing you know, it's showing up as missing assignments. You're like, what's going on?
I was fortunate, we'd have to wait until the progress reports got mailed home.
Right.
Everything's digital. I know within a day whether or not the kids are missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Other teachers will be like, hey, they missed 2 consecutive assignments. Is everything okay? Do we need to, pull everybody in? Which is great that they're responsive, but the kids can't hide. They can't get away from it now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when you're in a large school, those things tend to get swept under the rug and overlooked until it comes time for grades. And then the parents are like, because now everything is so digital, but every teacher uses different programs.
Oh yeah.
Instead of the exact same one. It's like, and one teacher decided if they didn't get anything in, they would put it as a 0 so it didn't show up as missing.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, that does not help.
No.
And I talked to her, she's like, oh, well, I thought, it would light a fire under their rear end. And I was like, no, because if it's not showing as missing, they know mom's not going to see it.
Yeah. It's not
So,
yeah.
Right. Exactly right. So did you play sports? Did they have any sports that you like to do?
Well, so we grew up pretty poor. So could not really play sports because you got to have, all the sports equipment. So we were sponsored one year. We played Little League. There was a local place that sponsored a bunch of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that for a year. And then in high school, I ran track for a year because I already owned tennis shoes. So, it didn't really need much.
Right.
But other than that, not really a sports guy, which a lot of people are often shocked by. Much more into vocational trades and being outdoors and doing woodsy type stuff. So, I ran track. Okay. Not very well, not very fast. It was not good. I did not medal.
But it kept you mentally, moving forward. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I learned some good things about team dynamics. Because Little League, we were probably 9 or 10, and then again in high school. So just being a member of a team for a little while at critical point probably helped out quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And then what was it then that took you to thinking about joining the military?
So it was my senior year, and my buddy Casey Johnson always wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to be an airborne ranger. He wanted to do all of that super hua stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And he went and he took his ASVAB and he got a $7,000 bonus. And I'm like, wow, that's almost what my parents make a year. Like, that'd be great. So next thing I know, I'm sitting down and I'm taking the ASVAB, and it's like, what do you want? I was like, I want a job that gives me money, right? I want to get away from here and I want to be able to make money, because I already tanked, college a little bit with my goofing off too much.
Right.
So they're like, "Oh, do you want to be in the Army for like 3 years?" And I was like, whatever has a big bonus. So they're like, "Oh, well, we'll give you 20 grand for 6 years." And I said, "Oh, cool. Whatever that job is, I'll do it." Didn't know anything about it. I knew the title of it, came home, told my parents, they were happy and sad, the mixed emotions that parents have. And then, so I started my career in the summer of 2001.
Wow. And who knew things were going to just go nuts?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Joined during, generally a peaceful time. There was little small things, but nothing that we knew was coming. I was in basic when the Twin Towers were hit. So we all crowded around the drill sergeant's office and watched the TV. And, of course, they were doing what drill sergeants do and hyping us up and like, "All right, get ready. You guys are going next week," basically. So
how far into basic were you before you guys got shipped?
So I was in week 7. We never went anywhere. They just said that, right? Just to mess with us. I didn't deploy until the initial push in Iraq in 2003.
Okay. And so your folks, I could see your mom. I could just imagine it, tears in her eyes. My baby is, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially when 9/11 comes around, right? The worry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I had never left the state as a kid, right? We would go camping because, state land, that's free. And if you have a tent, you're good. So leaving, that was like a huge deal,
Right.
So like my nieces gave me candy bars, told me, to save them because they knew like in the Army, they don't feed you or whatever. And they're like 10 or 11 at the time. But I was so sad when I was leaving and the recruiters taking me to finally ship out to basic that I couldn't even eat the candy bars.
No. So you ended up having to give them away or
Yeah,
give them to...
I gave them away. Yeah.
Yeah. At least they didn't go to waste.
No.
So you get to basic training and you get off that bus or whatever it is. And what is your first thought?
Well, so they still did the shark attacks back then that the very famous, Army for. And I went to Fort Knox when they still had basic training there. Fortunately, there was a soldier or soon to be soldier that got off the bus before me that his strap on his duffel bag came undone. And dropping stuff everywhere. So all the drill sergeants swarm him and they're yelling at him. And the rest of us are just kind of quickly getting in line. That individual, his last name is Harris, and back then they would do alphabetical. So they had a bay of 50, and then they had 2 4-man rooms. Well, with a T at the end of my name, I was lucky enough to be in a 4-man room. And so was John Harris, the individual whose bag broke, because he was collecting all of his stuff, and by the time they got in there, the other drill sergeants had assigned all the beds. So we became very good friends. Still talk to this day, actually.
That's awesome. That actually was one of my questions was, do you still talk to anybody from back then?
Yeah, I talked to John Harris. The other ones have moved on, and neither one of us have been able to find them. But John was from Louisville, Kentucky. He was into gangs and stuff, and was one of those go to the Army, go to the jail situations. So he decided it was safer probably for him to join the Army. So he did.
Wow. And then funny stories. I love to hear funny stories of basic training or boot camp. So do you have any funny stories?
So ours wasn't really that funny. We had some really grumpy, it's funny that you were mentioning the Vietnam vets and their breakfast. They're wonderful people now. But when you're a brand new private they're your drill sergeants, they are not friendly. They're not the same group that you had breakfast with, I promise.
Yeah. They're there for one reason and one reason only.
Yeah. We did have an individual that when we're doing our rifle stuff, this is back when they still had foxholes at ranges, He was trying to put the cover back on and was being helped by someone else, and they pulled the big plywood cover, and he fell forward and fell in, hit his jaw on the cover and his legs up behind him, and he shattered his jaw.
Oh.
So he did not graduate with us. He had to spend 2 months, I guess, with his jaw wired shut.
Did he eventually?
Yeah.
Did he go back through?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had, I don't remember his first name. His last name was Abadaka. We had this really country redneck kind of drill sergeant that was visiting. And he liked to play with a knife, and he liked to throw his knife. And we're at the range one day, and drill sergeant went to throw his knife, and Abadaka went to go reach for something, and he got stabbed right in the hand.
Oh.
Yeah. Then everybody had to do like sworn statements, and it was like this huge event just to say it was an accident. And the drill sergeant, he didn't get in trouble, other than probably like, hey, don't throw knives and do dumb stuff. But this is the early 2000s, so you could get away with a lot of stuff that would get you probably kicked out of the military now.
Yeah. I shouldn't have laughed, because really it's not funny, but everybody was okay.
Yeah, trust me, we all laughed. It's okay. Abadaka laughed as they were pulling the knife out of his hand, so it's okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, the internet was just coming online. Like, you could do email, right? You could do, but you got to wait for the dial up. So, it's not like today, because something like that happens today, every mom in that branch of military knows, like every one of them. Well, and it's shared.
Oh yeah. Because the moms would have the pictures now and everything. Back then, we got 2 phone calls, and we had to earn them. Some people got 3. If they were from New York after the towers were hit, they all got extra calls, which rightfully so.
Correct.
But we have friends now, their kids have went to basic, and they're like, I wish my kid would stop calling me every day and just focus on being a soldier.
Yeah. As a mom, for me, it was really hard when my youngest Marine veteran now had gone to boot camp, because it was 13 weeks of no call. And in fact, they always said, oh yeah, you'll get a phone call when they get there. We never got a call, like, ever. And it wasn't until we were driving him home after he got his EGA, that he said, oh yeah, I ended up getting a phone that wasn't even hooked up. And so, like, I dial it, and hold the phone. And of course there's nothing happening. So I'd hang up and stand there, and the drill instructor would come over and, what's going on? There's nobody's answering. So try again. So he'd be like, okay. Right. And he was like, yeah. So I was like, for sure. And I had to talk myself down from a ledge, right? That
Oh yeah.
If he didn't make it, we would be notified.
Oh yeah.
Right. So,
I don't know how my parents did it. They didn't have a home phone until 2003. So I had basic training, and they didn't have a phone. The one time after the towers were hit, we were in our final week, and I got a phone call. I was able to call the neighbor and say, hey, I'm going to go to the end of the line. I'm going to call back in 30 minutes. If you can get one of my parents over here, that'd be great. So the neighbor went over and got my mom, and I got to talk to her at the end of basic. So that was nice. But she kind of do it, unfiltered, and just take it. Yeah.
That's all you can do. And, so, I mean, in that sense, I think it was better for my son that he didn't talk to me. Not that they even got to say anything other than, this is recruit, I have made it to Paris Island, and I am okay. And, pretty much that's it. And no, I love you. No, nothing. Click.
Yeah.
So, but it is what it is, and it builds character, right?
It does. I mean, that style of leaving your family home and then going and kind of starting to build your own identity as an individual is critical. And I don't I don't know if by having cell phones and having that constant access to your old life that the new recruits have, I don't know what the impacts are going to be.
And that's a really good question. We have a family friend, call him our fourth son, and he is in the Army. And I know he has access to his phone, like on Sundays. He's made it through basic and stuff, so he's moved on to additional training. But and for me, the Marine Corps, you didn't get that, so didn't get to talk to the kids. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard balance, right? If you look at it from like a strategic leadership and all the culture that goes into shaping somebody to be a war fighter. It doesn't matter what there's a lot of psychological impacts that aren't accounted for, and as the Army tries to protect mental health and all the branches try to protect the mental health of soldiers, they got to try stuff, right? There's not an easy button where they can go, okay, we can make them war fighters and we can make sure they're mentally healthy for the rest of their life. That they just got to kind of play with it, which is
exactly
scary, but
yeah. And okay, so you get done with basic, you graduate, and what do you do at that point?
So I'm a retired field artilleryman. I mean, leading the right way. So this was my first vehicle, but they don't have those at Fort Knox, right? That's a Fort Sill thing. I was one of the few artillerymen who went to a basic outside of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So we get bused down to Fort Sill, get off, and I start my advanced individual training, which was completely different because the drill sergeants here at Fort Sill did not think that basic training at Fort Sill or at Fort Jackson was adequate. So if you came from Fort Knox, and I can't remember the other place, you were treated pretty well. They're like, oh, well, you know what you're talking about, so you can go to the front of the cow, and we're going to harass all the people that were trained here at Fort Sill. I was like, oh, okay. Interesting. But I was complaining because I was a brand new private and I knew better.
That's interesting. Hey, shout out to G23. Thank you for showing up tonight. Angry Sarge, welcome. And how long then, once you got your training, did you find your duty station or get told where your duty station was going to be?
So AIT for multiple launch rocket system crew member, 13 Mike, is 4 weeks long. So I got it about week 2 that I was staying at Fort Sill. So my first duty station was just on the other side of the installation.
Okay. That's pretty handy.
Yeah, it made it easy. I didn't have to pack everything back up again and do the whole bus shuttle across the country.
Yeah.
So
well, and I'm sure your mom was happy about that too. At least you're still in country.
Yeah. So the same time I was going through basic, they shut down the field artillery battalions that were in Germany at the time. So the only other place to go was South Korea. So a lot of people got that into their contracts because they, actually talked and didn't just care about a bonus. So they got cool things like that I probably could have gotten, but I was okay with it. Yeah. So, because I, stateside, 13 hours back home by car. So it was nice.
Yeah. And that's not terrible in the scheme of the United States, 13-hour drive.
Oh, yeah. No.
So, okay. And then how long were you there at that duty station?
So I reported in December of 2001, and I left and I PCSed to recruiting in February, March of 2005.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you take out the deployment in 2003, I was here pretty much the whole time.
Okay. Nice. That's a nice thing when you can, be here and not have to deploy. Because, I mean, the fact of the matter is that those who get deployed is I mean, when you look at the numbers for the military as a whole, it's not the majority deploys. It's quite the opposite. So,
yeah, I have friends so I did a little over 20 years in a month, and I deployed 3. I have friends that have been in 11 years that have deployed 6 and 7 times in the same job, which is they just happen to go on deployment, come back, go to a new unit, and that unit's deploying like 6 months later. So
right.
they're just back to back to back. So I've been pretty fortunate that my career's been pretty stable and my deployments were spaced out pretty well.
And can you talk about where you got deployed to?
So in 03, we were part of the initial push into Iraq. So, when the U.S. declared war, we heard it on our shortwave radios, and we started firing volleys of rockets and missiles then. So we traveled.
What was it like when you first got there? Like for you mentally, what was that like?
Oh, it
when
was
you first
surreal.
stepped off?
Like you step off and the heat hits you, right? And everybody talks about the heat all the time. It's just dry and it's just hot. And I've never experienced anything like that ever. And then back then there wasn't all these bases and stuff that there is now. So we're setting up tents, getting connexes. I'm a private. I was a PFC, so I'm doing all the work, right? So all the leadership, they're getting ready. They're figuring out when the ship's coming in with all of our equipment and getting all that ready. So it was just busy, pass out, get up the next day and keep working. We get our vehicles, got to make sure everything's ready. They've been on a ship for a couple months. So you got to go through them with a fine tooth comb and make sure everything's good because, you're about to go to war. You want to make sure your vehicles are good.
And because it's not easy if something is broken to get replacement parts, right?
Yeah. We had one engine that blew up in Kuwait before we left, and they were able to source another one. I don't know how. And then we've had some maintenance issues with some of the other launchers once we were in Iraq. So as you can see here, it has a nice little track on it. One of the other launchers threw track in the middle of a sandstorm. And there was reports on the radio that there was an Iraqi battalion somewhere near us, right? Well, these aren't direct fire weapons. They're long range, right? We're not infantry. So made a lot of people very nervous. So a bunch of us, we all come pull security, and then the rest of us are helping put the track back on, which, in a concrete motor pool is a couple hour process, but in the loose sand and a sandstorm in middle of Iraq, it was pretty unpleasant.
Yeah. And where you can't see anything to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to put it on by feel?
Pretty close. And the launcher chief that was in charge of that, he was an anxious guy anyways. So, he's yelling and freaking out because he's worried about this enemy unit that's out somewhere that nobody knows. So he was not helping us stay calm and focused.
Right. And so I would assume that time period, you probably didn't get friendly with the locals.
So at one point, we were coming up and we stopped in some farm fields as we're marching north. And they came out and, they tried to have us marry their daughters so that we could bring them back to the United States. So we were kind of friendly-ish in that. But it, 20-minute, an hour, really interaction. Because the push into Iraq was pretty fast-paced. So we didn't stay a lot of places very long until we got up to about Baghdad.
Okay. And was it just a lot of MREs, no local food?
Oh, yeah, just MREs the whole way. Yeah.
What was your favorite?
So they had a chicken cacciatore that was good. And then they had what we called the fingers of death. They were 4 very skinny beef hot dogs. They had this weird aftertaste. Which, that part wasn't good. But as far as MREs go, it's what you get.
Right. It's survival. Oh, goodness. And then how long were you there for, did you say?
So my unit was there for 5.5 months.
Okay. And then back stateside for how long?
So we went back stateside, and then my next deployment wasn't until 2008. But that I went to recruiting, came back, and then I had PCS to Fort Hood, which is now Fort Cavazos.
Okay. And your second deployment, where'd you go?
Iraq.
You went back to Iraq. Okay. And was it any different for you?
Yeah, so we didn't do our job. So there was a huge block of time where 13 series soldiers did everything else. So the joke was we were 13 miscellaneous. So we actually went over to Buka prison and acted as prison guards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And how was that?
Interesting. So depending on which part of the unit you were in, depended on which compound you ended up, we ended up at the schoolhouse. So if they were what they call green to green, meaning that the prisoners weren't found guilty of like placing bombs or anything violent, and they didn't do anything since they were in prison, then they could go to the schoolhouse and they could learn math and English, some woodworking. I think they had art class. So we managed that, us in the Navy.
And how easy was it for teaching? Did you teach or just guard?
We were just guarded. So they had a teacher that would come in and do the different subjects, but we were just in charge of making sure that they got off the transport from whichever compound they were in, get them into the compound for the school, and then search them and put them back on transportation to go back to the compound after school was done for the day.
Okay. Did any seem like, I mean, like they enjoyed that or?
Yeah, so there was a couple of them that were very grateful. One of the things that sticks out is one of the gentlemen was definitely a mixed background. So he looked like a blonde surfer, but he was Iraqi.
Oh, wow.
Probably from the first time that, there was Americans in that region before. But yeah, he spoke pretty good English, and he just liked coming to school and learning how to do math, and art was his favorite.
Nice.
So, yeah, definitely shocking to see a 6-foot blonde hair, blue-eyed Iraqi. I was not prepared for that.
I would guess not. Yeah. You think about that. And so I wonder if he was like born there or
he was. Yep.
he was actually born in Iraq. Interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. So with all of that happening up to this point, what did you do to kind of lighten your time there? Like,
So again, we do stupid boy stuff. So we had OC spray, so like tear gas canisters, and we would spray a little bit on different types of food and see who could eat it. So start small with just a little quick spritz on some bubble gum and see if you can chew it, and sometimes on a cracker, and we had one guy that said, "Oh yeah, that's nothing. I'll spray any part of my body," and he sprayed somewhere he shouldn't have, and he spent a lot of time crying in the porta-john with us handing bottles of water so he could rinse himself.
I could just imagine a medic right now. How did this happen?
Look, some of the medics I've met over the years would probably encourage that behavior just so they had something to do.
Well, probably. There is I don't know. I don't know who she is, but there is a female. I don't know if she really is a medic, a military medic, and she'll come in, and start talking to somebody, or like at least act like she's talking to somebody in the background. You can't ever see. You just see her talking. Yeah. And it's all these crazy things like that, something like that. How am I going to put this in the medical file?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the stuff the medics have to see is some of it's stuff that they were trained for that makes sense, like trauma, like a soldier hurt themselves or was wounded. And then you have the stupidity of a bored soldier. And what you see on that spectrum is much more broad. So,
yeah, I would say so. Okay, so you make it back again to stateside.
Yep.
And from that point, what do you do?
So at that point, I go to a couple leadership schools when I'm at Fort Cavazos. One of them was actually at Fort Sill. Me and a friend of mine, we brought our motorcycles. We weren't supposed to.
How do you bring motorcycles? How do you do that?
Well, so we drove. It's a 6-hour drive from.
But they just let you in the gate with them.
Yeah. I mean, we were licensed. The thing is when you come back from deployment, they wanted you to go to additional safety classes and get reacclimated. Well, we got back and we immediately had to go to school. So, because that was during a time where if you didn't go to school, you wouldn't get promoted. So, our wanted to make sure we were going to be eligible to get promoted. So they're like, yeah, you're going to school. So we go on a little ride, and he wanted to race because he put a lot of money into his motorcycle while he was gone. I was at a shop, and I don't like being shown up. So we're going down Highway 49 here at Fort Sill out to Mount Scott, and we start to slow down, and a nice highway trooper pulls up between us doing about 140. So we spent a couple hours in the back of a squad car. Our bikes were impounded. Fortunately, he was a former artilleryman before he was a highway patrolman. So he's like, I'm just going to drop you gentlemen at the gate and tell the MPs what you did, and they can take you to the school, and they can tell the school chief, and then the Army can do whatever they're going to do with you. So we're like, okay, thanks, appreciate it. It's better than going to jail. Probably not going to be good for us, but still better than jail. Drops us off. MP's like, oh, we got to call somebody to drive you over to the school so we can tell. They send this brand new little PFC over. He's sweating bullets, so we're messing with him because we're senior NCOs at this point. And we're like, hey, are you really good with customs and courtesies? Loctite, right? Because you're going to go tell the school chief who's in charge of all these senior NCOs. So he's going to be mad, and he's going to probably take it out on you. And anything you do wrong is just going to magnify his anger.
Mm-hmm.
So we got him so nervous, he dropped us off 2 blocks away. And we just walked back, and nobody at school was the wiser. But it did cost me about $2,000 in tickets and getting my bike back.
Yeah. That's a crazy story. 104?
140.
Sorry, 140? That is, oh my gosh. You guys are very fortunate that you didn't get injured.
Yeah. It's not the fastest I've been on that bike. Still have, it's in the garage. But I don't do that anymore. If 90 or 100 starts feeling like the speed limit, I put the keys away for a while until I learn to respect it. So
that's great thinking. Yeah. I'm struggling because my son after he got out, bought a motorcycle, and I'm struggling with that as a mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta let I gotta let him do his thing. But I think he's just trying to, force me to have a heart attack and of worry. And I told him there's no money. So,
Thing, sorry.
So he doesn't have to try so hard. But it's interesting that what we used to do and then we get a little older and wiser, right? Okay, so then you get to your third deployment, and what was that about?
So that one was in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and it was just to be present in case anybody in the region wanted to test us, right? So it was really just a show of force. So we sat there. I was the master gunner of my unit, so I'm in charge of making sure everybody's trained and certified on all weapons. So I got sent to Afghanistan. So I spent 42 days bouncing around Afghanistan. It was supposed to be 7 to 9 days, according to my boss. So I packed a very small bag. So I was not very happy with him. I still tease him about it today, because 42 days is considerably longer than 9.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And what was it like there? What was the reception like for you guys?
So in UAE, Camp Red Lake, which doesn't exist anymore, it's a third world base in a first world country. So the water and everything's trucked in, sewage is trucked out. Our chow hall was a tent, so kind of like reminiscent of 2003. We stayed in converted trailers, so we had 2-man rooms for senior NCOs, or 4-man rooms if you were a junior enlisted. But from our camp, you could see the Burj, and you could watch the fireworks and the laser light show that they did every weekend.
Every weekend?
Every weekend they do fireworks and this laser light show on the side of the Burj.
Wow.
It's a very, very decadent place when you go and visit. So there was a couple times we were able to get passes and we would go down to the Burj, and there's a giant mall and shopping center down there, so we could go down there and eat and just kind of immerse ourselves in being in a place that people pay lots of money to travel to.
Right. And so your reception as far as American soldiers being there with the locals, were they okay with you being there?
Yeah. So, we get classes on, the cultural norms, the do's and don'ts. So as long as we abided by that, we had no issues. Our unit was pretty good. We didn't cause any major issues. Sometimes you get soldiers there, they don't listen and they do things that shouldn't. So, but no, it was good.
And cause an international incident. Yeah, I could see that now. How about so you were able to get passes to go to see those, but does that mean then that you were able to go out and eat at the local establishments for food?
Yeah. So depending on who your boss was, it was easier to get a pass. So my roommate, one of my best friends, Ray, and I were senior leaders. We work in the headquarters shop and we do a lot of stuff. So if we asked for a pass, it was pretty easy for us to get one. So we were able to go. We did this dune excursion where you go out and they take you in trucks and they drive you through all the sand dunes and you do all this jumping and it's crazy. And then they take you out to this little oasis, basically. And they serve you dinner, and then there's a fire show. So they have a dancer up there dancing with fire sticks and doing all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, some of the best food I've had was there. And then we did a lot of joint stuff with the Emirati soldiers. So do a couple joint live fires. And then they do a huge feast. So they roast a couple goats and you have all of that. And you just sit down as a group and just talk and get to know each other and eat. It's good.
And when you're sitting there and you're talking with these other individuals, and they're a lot like you, right?
Yeah. So the Emiratis, right? That country is very, very wealthy. So most of their soldiers are very, very wealthy. So there's that obviously disparity between like our all volunteer force and then what they have to do. But they enjoy serving, they enjoy doing stuff. So there's a lot of common ground there that until you sit down and talk with them that you don't really know.
Right. But as far as differences go, there's a lot of similarities, right? They want to provide for family. They want to, they might not be patriotic in that sense, but, I think there's very few countries that are like us as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But they want what's best for the country and want to help protect it. So where they're living, which I get, and that's a lot of, how we are. too. So
Yeah,
a lot of
and
similarities.
they were eager to learn about us and learn about American culture and just spend time with us, just to enjoy time together, which was
Right.
so it didn't feel like it was this forced, like, okay, like a high school dance where like, oh, everybody come here, and everybody's on two different sides of the room.
Yeah.
They enjoyed our company and we enjoyed theirs.
Yeah. And what was the biggest takeaway for you from Dubai?
Well, so one of my biggest takeaways of the Army as a whole, because of my deployments, was the world is much different than what we think it is here in America, based on media, based on what we know. You know, you see Dubai is this great place to go, and everybody wants to fly and hang out there. And I'm like, okay, this would be good for a week, and then it's like anywhere else. But because it's different and it's new, people want to travel there. So, but yeah, greatest thing was just getting to know that not everything that I hear and see here in the United States is 100% accurate. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more depth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have your chow hall and you have their food. What was your preferred food then?
Their food 100%.
Kind of figured.
Yes, we got.
Kind of figured. And how long were you stationed there?
So we were there 9 months for that one.
Okay. All right. And then back stateside.
Back stateside.
Okay. And then what'd you do?
So once I got back stateside, that was towards the end of my career. So I was starting to mentally prepare for retirement, figuring out what I was going to do as I transitioned out. I ended up working in the Casualty Assistance Office here on Fort Sill as my last official duties. So I was a casualty assistance officer, so I would help the spouses and families of retired soldiers who had passed.
Okay. I can imagine that would be a difficult job.
Yeah, it was very fulfilling in the way of like taking care of those families as I was transitioning out.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt great to do that, but it was very tiring and very taxing because most people don't realize it. But here at Fort Sill, about 15 to 20 veterans a week pass. So you have to, there's two green suiters, Army guys in there that are in charge of making sure those families are taken care of and helping them with all the paperwork and answering all their questions and making sure all of that stuff is taken care of. But you're doing 7 or 8 of those a week minimum.
Wow. That is a lot. That is a lot. And, different with the different wars, I mean, there's still some World War II veterans. There's obviously Vietnam veterans, but it's, there's going to be less and less, obviously. So that's never easy. As far as transition goes, did the Army provide you with resources? What year did you?
21.
21. Okay. Did they provide you with resources when you transitioned?
They did, but it was during COVID. So a lot of the stuff that you would normally go in person for was a phone call or a Zoom class, which is, it's hard to get into the nitty and gritty. Luckily, I had a plan. So I was fortunate.
Your plan was, and I'm not necessarily asking what that was, but you'd already had a path in your mind of the direction you wanted to go when you got out.
Well, so because I grew up poor, I wanted to make sure, like as I retired, that I had a bulletproof life, right? So last few years we lived under our means. We made sure we had a good savings, so that way when I transitioned out, there wasn't going to be an immediate need, but there also wasn't going to be an immediate drop in quality of life because I'm not working full time.
Right.
So the goal was to, had 2 years worth of money saved up so that way I could transition. And if I didn't work and I needed to figure things out, I could do so. So I had a plan, which was nice because not a lot of veterans do when they transition, whether they retire or whether they just do their terms of service and get out.
Right. And how long did it take you to find a path that worked for you?
So my first 3 months, I went in what I call veteran hobo mode, and I didn't do anything. I didn't get a haircut. I didn't shave. I didn't, I showered, don't worry. But
I can't smell you anyway, so it's all good.
That's good. So I just kind of tried to figure out who I was going to be outside of uniform. I've met a lot of veterans. Some of my friends are what I call stuck in time. So the best time of their life was when they wore the uniform, or a specific period why they wore the uniform. And I didn't want that to be my only identity. And I wanted to make sure that I had a quality of life that wasn't just tied to my service. So I figured I'd just hang out, see what happened. And one of my friends that I started with, he's like, "Hey, can you stop by my office? Just got a couple of questions for you." So I go there and he's like, "Hey, can you hang this giant glass whiteboard for me?" "Yeah, I can do that." Yeah. He's like, "Are you looking for a job?" I was like, very passively, right? It's got to be something that interests me, right? Like, I don't really know what I want to do yet. So he's like, "Well, would you be willing to talk to my boss?" Like, "Sure, why?" He's like, "Well, we have a job opening I think you'd be perfect for." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll entertain it." So, and I forgot what I was doing, but I was wearing like a pullover. It was dirty, had like chips and stuff on it. And I was like, "Okay, I look like you pulled me off the street, but okay." So he goes and gets his boss, and she comes in and she interviews me, and she's like, "Yeah, I think this is good, but can you come back tomorrow and do a formal interview with the entire team?" I was like, "Okay, sure. What time?" 9 a.m. So, I got to go get a haircut. I have to go get a suit, right? I got to do all the stuff that, I probably should have already done. Interviewed, and then
Shower.
Showered. Lots of soap. And then go the next day, do the interview. 2 days later, they're like, "Hey, we'd love to have you," and started working for the local Chamber of Commerce.
Wow. Unexpected. And usually that's when things happen, right? When you least expect it, things fall, you're on that right path. And how long was it that, I guess, before, in your head, you're like, "Okay, I'm settling into civilian life"?
So I think I worked there for about 2 months before I started to feel like that. So when I started, some of the people that worked there, my friend had started working there about 2 months before, and he was still very military minded. So he was a major, and he was in charge of operations for a battalion, and he had a certain way he liked to do things. And it made sense to me because I'm a veteran and I grew up, and it all made sense. But he wasn't making it so that they understood like the process and how they fit in. And so they're like, "Oh, they're just trying to change it." And then I get hired and I'm friends. So they're like, "Oh, he's just going to make this whole place military." Well, I spent 2 months getting to know all of them because I was one of the 3 executives. So I had 2 direct report employees, but there was other ones. So I would get up every day and I would go hang out with another person for 15, 20 minutes, ask them, "Hey, how's life going?" Get to know them, ask if there's anything I can do to help make their jobs easier. And after about 2 months, they came around and started like welcome me as a person, and have actual conversations with me. Because, first like month, it was like, "Yep, I'm working on this. Yep, it's in Excel. Nope, I don't need your help. Yep, okay, thanks for coming." And they just thought it was me doing something. I don't know what they thought.
Micromanaging, checking in on them.
And after that came friends. I worked for the chamber for 6 months. I haven't been there for 2.5 years now, but we still go spend birthdays with people. One of them got married. We went out to their wedding. So still great people and made lifelong friends from it, which is nice.
That is nice. I have to ask, you have a dress saber up above your head.
Yes.
What is that?
I was in Korea and I was a staff sergeant, and I was in charge of the resiliency program for the entire peninsula in South Korea. And I was there 15 months. And at the end, they're getting all the awards ready. And I reach out to my boss and say, hey, do you know what you're getting me? I want to make sure I have room in my household goods so I can bring it back to the States. And she's like, okay, we're getting you a clock. I said, oh, okay. Most of the time people that leave here get a saber. And she's like, well, that's only for Sergeant First Class or above. Oh, okay, cool. I guess, right? So I'm talking to my local people, and they're like, no, that's crap. That's horrible. So 6 or 7 of them went together and got me a saber.
That's awesome. Did you get a clock?
I did get a clock. Yeah.
I thought for sure you were going to say she just set a clock and you really did get a saber, but that is awesome that they did that for you. Oh, wow. That is the clock.
That's the clock.
It's actually a cool clock.
Oh, yeah, it's very nice. But, the saber just has a, better story.
It is a really cool saber.
Yeah, it's just, I just thought it was cooler. And I did a lot of stuff when I was there for the peninsula, I felt. So luckily all the people that were local around me agreed. And so they took care of me.
That's awesome. When my husband and I got married, we used my great grandfather's dress saber to cut the cake.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. It's a tradition in our household.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to have stuff like that.
It really is. And I love that shadow box. It's absolutely beautiful with the way the flags are set up.
Yeah. They do great work.
They do. So let's talk about resources. So you have a VFW shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it says National Home. So tell me a little bit about that.
So the VFW National Home is in Eaton Rapids, Michigan. So it's in my home state. Before joining, actually my whole career, I didn't really know that it was there. So my wife joined the VFW when I was coming back from Korea. And so I get back from Korea. She's like, oh, I joined the VFW. I love it. These people are great. I think I'm going to run for post commander next year. And I said, okay, that's cool.
Now, is your wife military?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We were dual military for 7 years or so.
Wow.
She was medically chaptered. So she didn't get to, unfortunately, serve her full 20 like she wanted, but she still takes care of veterans today. So she's doing well.
That's awesome.
So she goes to her meeting because at this time I'm thinking Old Smoky Bar, a bunch of veteran style war store. I don't want part of that. I'm still serving. I don't feel like a veteran yet. And I don't want to just go into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes to a meeting. She comes home. She's like, hey, I'm the post commander now. I said, wait, what? What happened to next year? She's like, well, we're doing elections and they talked me into running and I won. Well, so I'm like, oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. So what do you got to do? And she's like, well, I'm going to figure out a lot because, most of the time you spend a couple of years in a VFW to work your way up. And she didn't have that. She was just passionate, taking care of people, getting stuff done. So like, you're it. And then she's like, oh, and I'm the first female commander of this post. So I was like, oh, that's amazing in and of itself right there.
Indeed.
Yeah. So after she became commander, I became a good husband and I joined the VFW.
Yeah, you would have never heard the end of that if you didn't.
Well, no. And so, I retired at the end of COVID. And so our post was closed for a little while. We were doing renovations to make it nicer. So when we could reopen up, that it'd be nicer for the veterans to come back. So I got to meet some of the veterans, find out really it's not a smoky bar. We do have a bar. At the time it was smoking. We've since changed it. But I would do all the physical stuff. I redid the flooring on our stages and stuff like that. So I got pulled into the VFW world. And then my wife's like, I'm going to run for department for the state level. I say, okay, whatever you want, love, I support you. So as they work through those chairs, when they become certain levels, they go do certain trainings at different locations. So she, one year, was responsible for going to the national home and delivering the check from Oklahoma for all the fundraising we did for the national home.
Wow.
So she goes up there and she comes back and she's telling me all about it, how wonderful it is. And we go the next summer back to Michigan to visit. And her grandfather was a Vietnam veteran, and he's interred at one of the national cemeteries in Michigan. And we asked her grandmother, well, would you like to go down there, because it's a couple hours for you and you don't drive. And, she got all teary-eyed and said, yep, because she hadn't been down there since he passed. So we took her down there, and then we took her and we got her a tour of the national home, where they take care of, it used to be just children that were orphaned or were struggling. They rebranded a couple of years ago, and now it's the national home, and they help soldiers and their families transition if need be, or if they're on hard times, whether they're guard or reserve, get set up so they can live there for a couple of years. They have a school and they have all these classes so they can teach money management and all the things that you need to survive and help you get on your feet. So it's a pretty cool place to visit.
That's awesome. That and the fact that she became the commander, that's impressive as well.
Yeah, she's pretty impressive.
That's cool. And please, let her know, that we appreciate her sacrifice and service as well. It's never easy when one is away, but to have two, that's got to be a little challenging for sure.
You mind if we take a quick bathroom break?
I do not mind. Go on and we'll keep talking.
All right, I'll be back.
So everybody, how's it going out in the chats? Go ahead and let me know what's up. Christine, welcome. G23, Jova Q, you guys, appreciate each and every one of you being out here. Let's see, what do we got in the chat? So I did see Angry Sarge likes spaghetti and meatballs, chili mac. I've heard that that's not bad stuff. All the vegetarian stuff were not great. Yeah, I can imagine that. And then I actually, this made me laugh. The hot sauce to go stuff, that being the pepper spray, the gel. That's kind of funny. G23. So you've got friends, 6-foot gingers, 100% Mexican that barely spoke English when you met them. That is really interesting. The fact that, you come across these people and it's kind of like an albino, right? An albino deer. They're very rare. Hopefully the weather holds for you out there, G23. Be thinking of you. I know that there was some tornadoes and stuff in some different areas of the United States today. So hopefully everybody is safe and accounted for. Christine, welcome. Much appreciate having you out tonight. And yes, chili mac is better homemade. So, all right. It looks like Randy is back. So let's bring him back on.
I agree.
Hello.
Home is good.
Right? Yes, indeed. So, all right. So, as far as resources outside of the VFW, what, if any, are you aware of in your area?
Well, so we have the C. Carter Crane home.
C is in just the letter C?
Yep, C. Dot Crane, Carter Crane. And that's a shelter that was going to be shut down, but a former veteran who's very active in our community decided that she was going to take it over and see it rehabilitated and reopened and expanded so that there's more resources. The community here does a veteran stand down day where they come together, and usually one of the local churches or one of the recreation centers will open up the doors so we can bring in food and clothing donations. We'll bring in the VA. Some of the different eye doctors in town will come and donate their time to check people and update prescriptions, bring in the local DAV so that the veterans' records can be updated, give them ID cards if they've lost it or they don't have one. We have Mike Community Center, which is a nonprofit where they help provide schooling and education for children and their caregivers. So we have a lot of parents or grandparents raising their grandkids that don't really know what to do. You know, things have changed. The society has changed from when some of those grandparents raised their kids. And they might just need resources because maybe their grandchild is struggling, or maybe they're a new young parent. So they can go out there and they get a no cost classes and support. They do a community garden, teach the children how to garden. They do a lot of great stuff in the community.
Wow. I posted out in the chats, there's a link, and if you click on it, it should take you to the C. Carter Crane Center for Empowerment and Advancement. I'm assuming that's the one in Lawton?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what that is. That's what the link is out there if you guys are seeing that and wondering what it was about. And of those, I mean, I'm assuming you probably, being part of the VFW, you guys get several calls looking for resource help, etc.
Yeah.
And what's your go-to?
It really depends on what they need. So a lot of times it might be food insecurity. So we have Family Promise. We have a food bank. And then we have Hungry Hearts Ministry, which is a church that cooks on weekends and provide, well, they cook all week. But they do a huge thing on Sundays where they provide a meal, a place to shower and change their clothes. They have a lending closet, I think. So we have several of our members that are very active out there. Our day of service this last year was helping put together. They have a old box van that they cut the side out of and made it into a movie theater. So people could come in from the community that maybe can't afford to go and just come together and be somewhere and enjoy a movie together.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is that the one, familypromise.org?
Let me see. Family Promise of Lawton.
I think I just went to the main.
Yeah, so the one I have is familypromiseoflawton.com.
Okay. .com, not a .org. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, there it is. I'll put that one out there instead.
Then the other one is Hungry Hearts Feeding Ministry. And it's hungryheartslawton.com.
Okay, let's see. Hungry Hearts.
Ministry.com. Yes.
Mm.
I think that's what. Huh? Nope, sorry. hungryheartslawton.com.
There we go. Okay.
And then one of the unique things that we have here in Lawton is the Comanche County Veterans Council. Which is, I think right now there's 18 veteran or veteran supporting organizations that are part of that. So they come together once a month as a collective to discuss all the veteran issues, veteran supporters, family issues, so that way people can help align resources or support where it's needed. So we have the Vietnam Veterans of America. We have we have two VFW posts here in Lawton. Both of the posts, we have the American Veteran Supporters, Military Widows. So it covers the whole gamut of the spectrum of what a veteran or their family might need.
And what is that one again?
Comanche County Veterans Council.
MAN.
COMANCHE.
Oh, wait, sorry. Comanche
County Veterans Council. I don't know if they have a website, but I know they have.
Was that Lawton also?
Yeah, it's in Lawton. Well, I'm trying to see if they have a website. I think they only have a Facebook.
I think they actually do, but I don't know. I think this might be it. SWOKMOAA.org.
No, that's the Southwest Oklahoma Military Officers Association, who's a member. They're a great group of people too.
Here, let's do this. It says Charity Navigator at least. I don't know if that'll be.
Yeah. Well, on their Facebook, they don't have a website.
Mm-mm.
So I'm going to have to harass Becca about that.
Tell them, get on it. In the meantime, we've got hungryheartslatin.com. And then we also have familypromiseoflatin.com. So I'm going to go ahead and put both of those as well in the chats. So
yeah, the other one that's really good was the MITE Community Development Resource Center. And that is MIGHT.
MIGHT?
Yep. CDRC.org.
Wait, MIGHT what?
CDRC.org.
Okay. I was expecting longer and didn't realize it was.
Nope, they kept that one nice and short for us.
Let's try that again. I was typing in the wrong one. Okay, and there's that. So we'll put that one out there as well. There we go. And let's go ahead and get some of these put out here. If anybody is interested in those as well. So I'm going to put some out in the chats. And there's that one. And Family Promise. Okay, excellent. And so if you guys happen to be in that neck of the woods, anybody watching, you can find those in the chats as well, or you can definitely give a call or send me an email at Conversations with a Vet, and I can get that information for you as well if you can't locate it quickly enough. Let's see. I was trying to see. Oh, okay, they're talking about Oregon in the chat. So I was like, what are they talking about? So, and nowadays, so you've been out since 2020, right? The end of 2020?
September 21.
Oh, of 21. Okay. And you feel like you're now integrated really pretty well? Or do you
Yeah,
still have moments?
I still have moments, but I work on post. So I do .mil PFP integration for the Army Capability Manager for Counter Small UAS, which is a
Okay.
mouthful.
That actually is a mouthful.
Yeah. So whenever the Army wants to have a new capability, they have a framework that is called .mil PFP, and it provides everything needed to fully resource that capability. So doctrinal changes or updates, organization, personnel, policy, leadership, development and training, facilities, all these different things have to be accounted for in an organization as large as the Army.
Right.
So my office, we manage it specifically for small UAS systems. So a lot of the stuff that's currently in Europe, a lot of it that's in CENTCOM. So it's, but I work with military all the time. I was just out at Fort Moore, formerly known as Fort Benning, to watch some potential updates to the night infiltration course, which its history goes back to World War One.
Oh, wow.
Warfare. So the commander out there is doing great things at looking at realistic threats in the current time. So that way, those soldiers are prepared to go and handle business wherever they might end up going. So it was cool to be able to sit down with a colonel and sit down and say, hey, so why are you making these changes? What do you need from us? How can we help enable it as the Army to make sure that these soldiers are prepared? And he said, hey, we haven't done trench warfare. We haven't really worried about enemies shooting flares and us needing to freeze while we're going underneath concertina wire or razor wire in quite some time. So I want to update this and make it more relevant. So we're going to start with having some drone interactions. So it was good. It was successful, but it was definitely a unique challenge to think about all the other things in the Army that might need to change or update to support this one thing.
Yeah. And, interestingly enough, now, I mean, I guess I draw a correlation with businesses and having to keep up with technology. The same kind of thing could be said, in regard to the military, right? Keeping up with the technology, because if we don't use it, somebody's gonna. And knowing how to deal with that, to me, makes perfect sense. And it sounds like you found your niche.
Yeah, it's weird. I get teased a lot by my former 13 series guys because that's field artillery, and what I do now falls under the umbrella of air defense artillery.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making sure I'm a good artilleryman, doesn't matter where it's at.
Right? You're well-rounded.
I'm well-rounded, so I enjoy it. It's challenging. My team's a bunch of retired guys as well, and they're all phenomenal in their own ways. So it's great because I get that day-to-day camaraderie that I don't think really exists anywhere else outside of a group of veterans. So you can, like, I have civilian friends that I'm very close with that I absolutely love and adore. They're part of the family. But the conversations are different when it's a group of veterans.
Yeah, for sure. Now you're I guess the question I have, I guess I should say, is pertaining to anyone who's interested in joining the military, specifically the Army. What words of wisdom do you have for them, as well as those who are looking to EAS out?
So I think anybody that's thinking of joining should do it. If you're eligible to join, do it. It can change your life. You just got to let it. You got to have some faith in that. I originally signed up thinking I was only going to do 6 years. And then I had kids, and I was like, okay, well, I have to be the provider, and there's no other better way that I can think of to provide everything that the military provides. So I stayed in because I had daughters, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And so they would never have to live the same life that I did. Not that my parents didn't try, but they were stuck kind of in the cycle that they were in. So it changed my life, and my daughter's lives are probably much better than they would if I would have did 6 years and then got out. Actually, the one probably wouldn't have been born because I didn't meet her mom, my wife, until after that. First contract would have been done. And then for people that want to get out, right, whether they do their term or they're looking for maybe a reason to get out, I still tell soldiers, my former soldiers that I still talk to, if you can stay in and do 20, do it. But don't do it at the detriment of your mental or physical health, right? Because it's not about, like, I stuck it out. I was going to stick it out till 20, even if I was falling apart, right? Because I needed that. I needed that security for the family. But not everybody needs that or wants that, right? So, you have to protect your mental health, and you have to protect your physical health, because sure, you might get out, but if your quality of life is horrible, that's going to impact everything else. So, and like many people, especially veterans that are listening, you've lost a lot of people at their own hands because they were trying to make it to a goal that probably wasn't really attainable for them. So I wouldn't push it to 20 years and then take your own life 2 years later, 5 years later, years later. It's better to be self-aware enough to know when enough is enough.
I think those are some really wise words, for sure. And you do see those who get out even after 16, 20 years, they get out and they do like you did, right? That hobo time. And in that time, they spiral. And that's kind of that time frame when you've got to be cognizant of your own mental health. When you're trying to figure out what you want to do, because a lot of times it's a matter of feeling like you're not being productive, and I don't know, it's a whole different feeling, right? It's not like somebody who is a civilian in that sense and they don't have a job. It's a lot different because military, you're strict. You've got strict things you've got to do, discipline, and people telling you what to do and where to be, and how to do things, and then you get out and you don't have that.
Yeah, I was fortunate that my wife got out before me because she had a lot of lessons as I was getting ready to transition. So as I was getting ready to get out, she's like, "Hey, you're going to go take a vacation and you're going to go figure out who you are for 45 days."
Wow.
So she literally booted me out. I went to Michigan and spent time camping and spent time with family because she didn't get that. She was going through a med board and she couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't take leave. She couldn't do anything. And then the med board was done and it's like, "All right, here's your GD 214. Have a nice day." So she didn't have all the resources. She didn't have all the same stuff I got as I transitioned, but she had purpose one day and then the next day she didn't. and she didn't want that to happen to me. So
What a great woman.
she's phenomenal. Wonderful, wonderful woman. So I'm fortunate because I trained the Army Resilience Program for 11 years while I served. So we were able to have some of those conversations at a deeper level than maybe most can. So that
Right.
she could recognize, like, hey, you need to go do this. You're going to need to have an identity and a purpose once you take off the uniform, because she didn't have that. And she hated the Army for like 2 years when she got out. She like refused to like go on to Fort Hood to do anything. And then when we moved up here, she fell in love with the VFW, got her sense of purpose and identity back, became an FRG leader in my unit, was a 100% advocate for all the soldiers, especially female soldiers. So the soldiers really loved her because she would come and they'd be like, hey, I can't say this. And I say it. She'll stand up. She don't care who it is. So it's good to have somebody like that in your corner.
That's awesome. We need to have that conversation. I would love to have her come on and tell her story if she's up for it. But if anybody is watching that's out in the chats, if you've got questions for Randy, go ahead and get them put out there for me now, and we'll get those posed to him. So where your kids, they're not, how old are they? I mean, like the oldest one.
So I have a 20-year-old.
Okay.
She lives in Michigan. And then we have an 18-year-old that's not ours, that is ours. She's my 17-year-old's best friend.
Nice.
And she moved in last summer and she lives with us.
Okay. So the girls are pretty much grown and raised.
Yeah. As much as a 17 to 20-year-old could be.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't have, they're not little, so you don't have to worry about that. And you're young enough now that you and your wife, have that time to grow back together and, get to know each other once again, because that's always something too. When you're gone for extended periods of time, it's an adjustment just coming back home.
Oh yeah. It's in multiple times, right? Because every time is different.
Right.
You try to tell people that, and if they've never experienced it, it's not like, okay, I'm just doing this monthly little trip and I'll be back.
Yeah.
We weren't together in 2003, but we were in 2008, and that was a 15-month deployment. And that was drastically different than the 9-month one to Dubai. And it was different than my rotation into Korea.
Yeah.
So they're all just dynamically different. And so coming home, it's kind of figuring out, okay, what are you used to doing? What does your day look like? How can I, still be me and be part of the family, but not like overtake everything? It's a fun challenge at times.
Right. And communication is key.
Yes. Yeah. We're pretty good at that.
Which is amazing. And that makes me happy to hear, because, that's a lot of times that's an issue for those who are coming home, and how to communicate and have those difficult conversations. Sometimes it's easier to avoid.
Well, so she deployed in 2003 as well. So she's been on the deployed side too. So that helps, because she's had to come back home and, reintegrate with family and friends and all of that. So there's that connectivity there that not all couples share. So we're very fortunate.
Yeah, for sure. I am not seeing any comments or questions out there. But I definitely want to say thank you, Randy, for taking the time to come out and having that conversation with me, and letting people hear kind of, what you did and where you're at now, and, letting them see some positivity, right? That we can make it through whatever's put in front of us. It just, you just got to be persistent for sure. Thomas, welcome. And appreciate you being here. You can always go back and listen to the recording. So, And everybody, if you could, when this ends, be sure to go out, give it a thumbs up, put out a comment, and share it, please, please. I've been shadow banned a little bit. I had a previous guest a couple weeks back, and apparently YouTube didn't like the titles of my shorts.
Oh,
Yeah, it's it literally was a veteran who turned Secret Service, who was in the uniform division of the Secret Service and stationed at the West Wing during the Clinton administration. And yes, so they don't like, YouTube is not liking that very much.
Yeah, I see that happening.
So yeah, please everybody go out, watch some of those shorts. Let's, try and get past YouTube's little, because usually you do these shows and then you break them up into little shorts, and they will send them out literally. Gosh, I think 40, 50,000 people just little notifications about the on people's timelines. But this show that I had and the shorts, they sent it out to like 19 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely would love some support with that. And obviously we want to, it's a veteran, it's a fellow veteran. We want to get stories out, and everybody has different things that they go through. And his just happens to be a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
But it's still his world, and we've got to respect that. So also, yes, Jason, thank you. When we hit 500 subscribers, we are going to be doing some giveaways. I have had, so Angry Sarge has some things that he said he was going to be donating. And I have several books that have been autographed sitting back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 or 6 different books that have been autographed and ready to go by the authors. So really exciting thing when we hit that number. So make sure you, if you could, please, if you haven't already, subscribed. And as Thomas Klein says, there is a thing in YouTube where it says notify. So hit the notify button, the little bell, so that you get notifications of those shows. And then I do start, you should be getting notifications at least at pretty much, I don't know, at least 20 minutes prior to each live show on Sunday. So I'm really excited for next week as well. And Randy, again, thank you so very much for your time and your sacrifices and service as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing how things go for you in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. And everybody else, please, again, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And Randy, if you will, just hang tight for me for a few.
Okay.
Let's see. And all righty. I think that's pretty much all I've got for tonight. So everybody have a great night, and we will see you again next Sunday.